A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this first edition of Spectrum Extra for the new year 2025. My name is Kenneth Lukwaga Anderson, your host. So today we'll be reviewing the major events of this week, but also looking at the projections for 2025, because it's believed that what is happening around this time has a huge connection with what is likely to happen in future, especially when it comes to issues of governance, human rights, but also the economy and the elections that we are likely to have in 2026. I have a panel of four to share their views on some of these key issues that have happened this week. Let me introduce the Honorable Simon Mulongo, governance and security expert who served as deputy head of the African Union mission in Somalia. He was also member of parliament for Bobulo East. Most likely he's going to run again in that particular constituency. And he was also a member of our constitutional making body, the Constituent Assembly. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It is nice being here, and it's nice to see my colleagues, and happy to entertain the new year with these very, very rich topics.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. Ms. Perry Aritua, Executive Director, Women Democracy Network, Uganda Chapter, Pandit on Governance and Human Rights Matters, seasoned election observer. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum Extra.
Thank you, Kenneth. Good evening, viewers, listeners, and my fellow panelists, and Happy New Year to all the listeners.
Mr. George Musisi, lawyer and Pandit on Governance and Human Rights Matters, member of the National Unity Platform Party, is also planning to run somewhere. I've seen some things moving around social media suggesting that you're also aiming at the Oka's house.
Your choice of words, when it comes to planning to run, then Simon, you say likely too. He's here. If he's likely, he's also planning. Good evening, listeners. Pleasure to be here, and Happy New Year to everyone.
We expect our fourth panelist to join us shortly, and when he does that, I will introduce him. Well, the year has begun with a lot of things. We know there are certain things that are happening now that lingered on from last year. For instance, the trial of Dr. Kizza Besigye in the military court-martial, it has caused a lot of discussion, and it went notch high with the arrest and detention of his lawyer, Aaron Kizza. We also saw Martha Karua from Kenya finally being granted a practicing certificate to lead the legal team. And this trial will continue next week on Monday, when we expect those issues to be handled by the military court-martial. But some people actually think that this is simply playing politics in the military court-martial. The issue is to dislodge Dr. Kizza Besigye from the electoral agenda, and his colleagues who are working with him to register a new political party feel aggrieved. They think this is politics being played out by the military. Then, of course, this week we have had the death of Muhammad Segirinya, who has been Kawempe North MP. You know, it has kindled the debate about good governance and issues of human rights, especially when people have been making statements and saying he has died partly because of political impunity. Apparently, he was feeling unwell, and then he was denied bail. And people are saying that there needs to be lenience. Politics should not be taken that far. When somebody is sick, they should be given attention. Life is more important than the politics of the day. But people are also concerned about the nature of politics and accusations that continue being leveled against members of the opposition. We'll be also looking at that particular issue. But that aside, we have the issue of the economy. Poverty and inequality remain major concerns. We're also seeing the issue of borrowing, continuing our national debt. Some reports suggesting that by the end of this month, we might have a debt of about 100 trillion shillings. Yesterday, there was another, clearance of borrowing by Parliament to the tune of $88.37 million from the African Development Bank for infrastructure projects. So we'll be running through these issues to try to understand how they are likely to affect our country as we move into the new year. Let me begin with you, George Musisi, on this issue of the political ground and the issues that have emerged so far. Some of them, like I already said, were around last year, and they have continued, to play out. And some people actually suggesting they might even design or define the political terrain as we go into the election process.
Well, let me begin by commiserating with the nation. In your preamble, you talked about the death of the Honorable Muhammad Segirinya. And I want to send my commiserations to the people of Kawempe North and his family, and of course his colleagues, both in Parliament and the party. Mohammed, I think, represents one of those very, very tragic stories for a person who has spent the bigger part of his legislative term in custody. When he finished the custody, he has been sickly. I have every reason to believe that his health condition was worsened by the prison conditions. We know that the second time they applied for bail and court rejected them. It was pure on health grounds, and then court rejected it. And of course, he's been frail ever since then. Of course, his death should shine a light onto the plight of all other prisoners, especially even political prisoners. But we have something in Uganda called pre-trial detention, where if a person is facing charges in the High Court, after being committed for trial, you can spend even as many as 7-8 years in custody without trial, which is very unfair because you're still a suspect. And what that means is that you can actually die, the witnesses can move, people can lose interest, that by the time you actually go for trial, you've spent a lot of time and you go away scot-free. In fact, to bring that home, the 7 other co-accused of Muhammad and Alan, who didn't get bail, are still in custody. So the trial hasn't started years later. So it's a sad story. I happened to know Segidinya, the man, the humorous person. I happened to, I think the first time he was summoned over those charges in Masaka, to appear at Masaka Police. I'm one of the lawyers who went with him to record a statement. He was given bond and then was told to come back 5 days later when he was detained. So it's such a sad story. Regarding the events and how the year has started, of course, 2025 is an electoral year. And 2024, 2023, and 2022, both the politics and the environment has had remnants even from the past election. In fact, sometimes you'd think that Uganda is one of those countries that politic a lot, given the excitement. But then it's also because of the expectations and the unmet expectations as well. The expectations from government, who are the principal duty bearers, but then also the unmet, especially social expectations. So that has formed the backdrop coming into the new year. If you look at, you're talking about this being an electoral year, most of the things that caused issues in the last elections, like involvement of security, non-observance of the rule of law, an independent electoral commission, and so on and so forth, have actually not been resolved. We still have the plight of political prisoners from the last election. We still have the unresolved issue of people who were killed in the last election by security agencies. We are having an increasing breakdown in observance of the rule of law by the state. So that doesn't augur very well as we start a new year. As you already seen, and you've mentioned in your preamble, that my brother and friend, Aaron Kiza, in the course of his duties earlier this week, when he went to represent someone, found himself in custody. And having earned the conviction and the sentence without going through trial. So that, I think, has jolted us all to see us that the year has started and that this is where we are. It's a sad state of events, which I think will take a collective pushback from all, and I'm not saying opposition, all people who are seeking a better environment, especially on the minimum of respect for the rule of law.
All right. We've been joined by our fourth panelist, Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, political economist, researcher, and columnist with the Observer newspaper. Good evening, Dr. Serunkuma. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Perry, let's hear your views, your preamble to this discussion.
Thank you, Kenneth. Apart from, of course, the Honorable Muhammad Said Jr., who passed on yesterday, we also lost the Honorable Margaret Babadiri, who was part of the 10th Parliament. I knew her personally, and for me, she's one of those politicians who represented a sense of hope that not all politics should be dirty. Because I recall that she always had time for her people, and she also broke stereotypes. You know, there's this thing that when you are a person with disability, people expect you to only stand for positions of people with disabilities. She stood for women member of parliament for Kogoko, and she went through, and she represented that district effectively. So I really want to condole with her family, and I think for me she represented a crop of politicians who understood that politics should not just be about the party you belong to, but it should be about ensuring that the aspirations of citizens are part of decision making, and that when those decisions are made, they lead to a transformation of the lives of people. So for her, she left a legacy. She belonged to the NRM party, but I can tell you in the engagements that we had with her and a number of the women councillors in that district, she demystified our politics, which at times is marred by intolerance, disregard for different opinions, and people's difference in association. So I really hope we can continue to see more politicians like her. Just to pick on from where George stopped, of course, seeing Aaron charged, sentenced, and taken to Luzira, for many of us who know him,
Kitalia.
Exactly, it was one of the most disheartening events. But it also tells you the situation in which we find ourselves as a country. And I've always said that when we dismiss the rule of law, we are doing a disservice to this country. Because one of the things that the rule of law expects is that everyone will be treated fairly, and that every person is innocent until proven guilty, and that you will have an opportunity to express yourself and really have a defense. Now, in his case, that did not happen. And for me, I also keep saying, why do we try civilians in that court martial? You know, so it's different when you know someone and when you know they're professional and they have to go through that. But it just tells you the state of our country. And for me, the question is, what then is the role of citizens in this whole conversation? What should we be doing as we move towards an election? There are a number of areas that have not been addressed following the last election. The impunity that marred the last election is still present right now. People who shot Ugandans have never been tried. The events of November 2020, I know mothers were killed, fathers, children. There's this young boy, I think he was 15 then, he was shot with his mother, you know. And you see, it's until when we address those problems, that's when you can bring sanity to a country like ours. So for me, that's my preamble as we move towards
all right.
election.
Let's hear from Honorable Mlongo, your preamble to this discussion.
Yeah, I also want to join my colleagues to register my very deep condolences to the loss of the two colleagues, the Honorable Sejirinya and the Honorable Babadri. I was with the Honorable Babadri in the 9th Parliament, with whom we had some early interactions. One time I was flying southwards, and we met, and she told me she was going to Zambia to South Africa to meet her daughter. And since then we became quite closely related on matters of our country and legislation. So to both of them, I really register our condolences. The year is starting with the high fever of elections, and at all levels, people are looking for, for the roadmap for the NRM. I know some colleagues here may have interest in that. We hope that the roadmap will be very clear and will be aligned with the National Independent Elections Commission roadmap, and we hope that people will adhere to the rules in circumstances where our elections are getting more and more commercialized, and choices are actually not as clear-cut. it makes the elections very, very tricky. My hope is that we don't have violence. My hope is that people are there to the laws. My hope is that some of the past experiences will not be repeated. We really need to stick to the principles necessary for good electioneering, namely voting for good manifestos. I also think that, yes, the economic performance, we continue to recover from the dreadful disease of COVID, and I hope that this year will be much better in terms of production and productivity, and we look forward to seeing some steady improvements as projected. So that is really my hope and wish, and that justice will be done to those who think there is need for more justice.
Let's hear the preamble of Dr. Serunkuma. I can see you're a little bit worried, the way you are holding your cheek there.
I mean,
What is the matter?
I mean, it's a nervous state, you know. It's a nervous state we're in.
Mm.
I mean, we just lost an MP in a condition that we knew was going to happen at some point, because he pleaded with the state. The state killed Mohamed Segedine. He pleaded with the state for a very long time that he needed to be treated.
You know, there's the difference between a state and the government. When you say the state, then you're saying all of us, not so.
No, you maybe you could be part of the government.
We all belong to the
I'm not sure you're
state,
part
not
of the
so.
state. But when I say the state, I mean the people with power to decide the exception. You know, people with power to control the tools of violence and can use them, and their use for them is illegal. It's protected by the Constitution for the state to use violence. To deny your right is protected. Constitution by the state to do that. Many times they abuse it. So we are in that nervous state that we just lost an MP. A lawyer, a human rights lawyer, is in jail for the conditions which nobody can ably understand. Nobody can ably explain. The deep state is trying to manufacture Kizza Besigye into some sort of monster. We don't know why they're taking this gamble. It's difficult to understand why they're taking the gamble of manufacturing Kizza Besigye into a monster. He's a man who has stayed true to the democratic ideals, even when they're missing in this country. There were windows where armed struggle looked attractive to the anti-Museveni people. Kizza Besigye didn't take that route. I don't think in his 70s, you know, he will be attractive. But also when you look at the African continent moves in phases. We are not in the phase of armed struggle. There's not a single country on the African continent where there is support for armed insurrection. It's not there. So for the deep state in Uganda to imagine that the problem, the enemy of Uganda 2025 is the Dr. Kizza Besigye, it makes us nervous. And the more nervous thing for me, Anderson, I hope I haven't overdone my preamble.
Not yet.
The most nervous thing for me is that we have a president who is very old, and we don't know how far he can go because there's no plan for an exit. It makes me more nervous because you see, I wrote an opinion in the Observer last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. Somebody put a comment which I've fallen in love with. He said, when a calf in the kraal starts to behave like a bull, then the bull is not well. We have so many calves nowadays behaving like bulls in Museveni's palace. You see, there are calves behaving like bulls, and clearly the bull is not well. Now, what is more nervous for me is that this bull has not given us an idea of a transition. How do we move from this nervous state? Well, we have young people losing their lives, and the state is spotlighted as the cause of this death. Where do we go? Because you see, my friend here, Councillor Mr. is gearing up for the election. This election is non-starter, because as long as Museveni stands as Xtra to stand, he's going to win it, and there'll be a wonderful team of young, eloquent, smart people in that parliament. But they'll be branded opposition. So are the kids of this country attacking? They're never there. You see, Balam, the MP, the minister, has access to state secrets that, say, the very smart Honorable Sam Uganda doesn't have. You see?
I don't know what you're implying, but let's go for a break. When we return, we'll expound this discussion and try to understand what exactly is making you nervous beyond what you've stated so far. Now, dear listener, tune in to Radio 1 FM 90 and stay with us, but keep your comments coming via WhatsApp line, which is 0703 090 090. Spectrum Xtra continues after this break. Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week. We are looking at some of the emerging key issues in the area of governance, human rights, and the economy as we continue reflecting on the issues that are happening as we begin the new year, but also likely to impact on this election year ahead of the 2026 general election. My guests are Honorable Simon Mulongo, Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, Mr. George Musisi, and Ms. Perry Aritua. Now, having made all your preambles and connecting the dots to the situation we are in, let's expound this discussion. And I want to begin with you, Honorable Simon Mulongo. From the Dr. Besigye story, we have the Aaron Kiza situation, and then we have the Honorable Muhammad Segirinya situation. And the words that have characterized all these three situations is impunity, bad politics, abuse of the opposition, and a lot of other issues that actually have come out. What would be your response to some of these issues that are being put across? And some people have actually said, as a country, we need to sit down and agree that beyond politics, there are people and their lives that matter in a situations like of Honorable Segirinya, but even in a situation of Dr. Besigye. In Parliament today, some MPs were actually sounding a warning and saying Dr. Besigye has been over-arrested, over-detained. What if something bad happens to him, just like what happened to Honorable Segirinya?
Yes, I took note of the specific accusation by my brother doctor here, who, without mincing words, decried that the state killed the Honorable Segirinya. And now you also repeat it. You see, the difference between the elites in any society and the others is really going for scientific thought processes, that you are critical in what you think and say, and that you don't just make allegations that you can never substantiate. And I say this because we do not have any specific report that implicates some method of killing that can be traced to the state. And if there is, I'll be happy to have it adduced. I also have talked to some colleagues who are medics and who are fully aware of the nature of the ailment our brother and friend, the Honorable Segirinya, was fighting. And they didn't seem to indicate state-related. And as such, I think it is very important that even over this medium of communication, which is nationwide, that we really have to speak with some restraint on things that we actually may be assuming, but we like to make political statements over. Because if we are brought to challenge that, prove that, it may become another hurdle altogether. So I think we all feel bad for the loss of the Honorable. I know he has been an activist, but also a darling of the people. So in the circumstance, we all feel the loss, whether it's the ruling party or the opposition or just the people of this country. In terms of Dr. Besigye, definitely as human beings, anyone and everyone in this country would sympathize with somebody who is incarcerated, and the family and those who, their beloved ones and so on. But at the same time, once you become of age, you are subject to the laws. If you are found to be on the other side of the law, you have to grapple with it. Whether you are innocent or you're not, it is a matter of judicial process. And as such, to me, I think we should give the benefit of doubt to the process, because both the prosecutors and themselves are on the spot to make their points for and against. And I'm happy that the court martial is even allowing people to film by using their phones to record. They're able to. So to me, I think yes. So the whole thing is, I know there are jurisdictions that hold such processes secretly. For example, the U.S. When the military commission, the U.S. is conducting their hearings, mainly they're in secrecy, and we don't. I also want to say that the issue I've been hearing a lot talk about why civilians should be, or do you want it to come later?
Please submit.
I want to tell you that the military court-martial is a creature of the laws of this country. Like any other established courts of law, they are created by the laws of this country. And so is the court-martial. And the UPDF Act is very clear about people who behave like and act like and look like the military. Because who is a civilian? We have people who are not uniformed, but they have military capabilities. For example, intelligence agents who train with the military and the military, and they even officially bear arms. But if they have retired, or even the ex-servicemen, if they have retired, they are taken to be civilians. Such people have capacity to cause harm, whether to the people or even to the state. So if they behave in a manner as if, and moreover illegally, bearing arms, associating with those who are committing threats against the state, and therefore against the constitution of the country, the UPDF Act is very clear, and the members of parliament who went through the process of collecting views and conducting hearings as committees before they finally had the law promulgated, had their sound minds. And they knew what they were doing. The circumstances drove them in such a way that they had to do it. I was just scanning through to see who else have their military courts have jurisdiction over civilians. The Egyptian military courts, they have jurisdiction over civilians. Pakistan military courts have jurisdiction over civilians. Israel have military courts, have jurisdiction over civilians, and all of them along the same legal provisions like the UPDF Act is. Therefore, we're not just being an island in the whole world where people want just to dismiss things and simply because they're not in their favor. And by the way, not just any civilian, only those who behave like and act like the military are the ones who will have made an application straight away to be candidates for that court.
All right. Let's hear from Perry. You heard from Honorable Mlongo there, insisting that, situations that we are discussing are not largely state-inspired. What would be your response?
I just wanted, first of all, to respond to his submission that civilians can be tried in the military courts. Because I think the Supreme Court made a ruling that emphasized that military tribunals were established to serve members of the UPDF and maintain discipline within the armed forces, not to prosecute civilians. And if you look at Aaron Kiza, Aaron Kiza is a civilian, a trained lawyer at that. But that being said, you see, the presumption of innocence until proven guilty is very important. And that's why it is embedded in our constitution, that even when you have been accused, it's upon the prosecution to prove beyond reasonable doubt, especially if it's a criminal matter, that you are guilty. Now, when you talk about the case of Muhammad Sejirinya, the circumstances that surrounded his case, I mean, there are times he would be given bail, he's rearrested in total disregard of what the court would have ruled. You know, that for me is wrong. Because if you establish rules, as a state, it is incumbent upon you to uphold those rules. Because when you don't, in fact, that's one of the reasons why we have impunity. Because we disregard what the laws have written. And laws are made to guide society, including the way justice is dispensed. So you cannot, and you see, that's why people have said the state killed Muhammad Sejiri. It's not literal, but you see, it is those circumstances that made it difficult for him to get bail, even when he was sick. We know that one of the conditions which the courts consider when granting bail is ill health, on several occasions. So it may not be direct, but indirect. Your actions then cause the death of someone. And for me, I think these are cases where we should revisit our humanity. That regardless of whether you agree with someone or not, the presumption of innocence is critical. That if the conditions show that this person requires bail, if the person is not going to run away, and because most times the conditions are stringent, that's why you have sureties, that's why at times, bail conditions are stringent, so that if they think you are a threat of not coming to report or being at your trial when it begins, courts do that to ensure that our humanity does not die. And I think we have reached a level, unfortunately, where at times we consider people who don't agree with us as the enemy. At the end of the day, we're Ugandans, and that's why these laws are made, that you have to treat everyone fairly. We have cases where people have been given bail when others would say they don't deserve it, maybe even their age and their health is good. But this was a man who clearly was unwell. So I think for me, we need to revisit our humanity, but we need to go back to the reasons why there are provisions that were made in our constitution. The importance of respecting dignity, the right to life, because once you're gone, that's it. And I think this is where those in power, those who have an opportunity to do the right thing, for me, cases like this show that we can actually do things differently. It just depends on whether we want this country to progress or regress.
All right, George, what's your take?
Well, two things. One, Honorable Simon was talking about whether the state had a hand or not. Well, we just have to reconstruct the facts.
Was it killed?
Well,
because that was the expression. The state killed.
Actually, when a person is being murdered by if his head is chopped off, the person who brings the panga and hands it over the actual murderer is charged with murder. The person who holds the victim's legs in order to support the other, so whoever is an accomplice, he can be charged with the principal offense. Anyhow, let's reconstruct the facts. These are members of parliament who are arrested and charged with a capital offense. Like I've mentioned, which capital offense up to today, 4 years since they were charged, has not kicked off, despite the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution saying it's ready for trial. To get it in context, many people have been following the case of the murder in Bogoro Vimbuya of Henry Katanga, which happened in 2023, which is undergoing trial now, and witnesses, they've had over 8 witnesses. The Segirinyas were arraigned in court 2 years before this case, which is undergoing trial, the events ever happened. That's how ridiculous it is. And then they were released on bail by Justice Victoria Nachintu at the High Court of Masaka, brutally rearrested upon release, which also was meant to be a bar on their right to a fair trial, because the courts have pronounced itself on that since 2005-6, when the PRAs were always suffering the same fate. That if you are having all these charges against Anderson and you arrest him on one, you let him apply for bail on one, and then you say, we have another charge.
You are meant to charge him.
Yes, it's deliberately meant to frustrate your right to go out. It's deliberately meant to ensure that you don't have a fair trial. So they were brutally rearrested.
Well, George, there's a question people have been asking. There are so many opposition MPs, so many opposition leaders. If you said these were trumped-up charges, why would the state specifically
let me finish my point. Let me finish that point, but to answer you directly, I'm not saying that opposition people shouldn't be charged if the state has a case. I'm saying because there are other, even Segirinya's co-accused, 7 of them are still in custody, and they also deserve a right to be out. We are saying that if you have a case, why don't you take them for trial? So you shouldn't use detention of suspects as a punishment, because at the time you are arraigned in court, it's only the state which has a case against you, Anderson. You don't know, even the other people don't know. So the state says it has strong evidence. But for 4 years, they have not arraigned. I remember in 2023, at the opening of the lawyer, the Chief Justice said, I'm going to massacre in 2 months if the trial hasn't kicked off in March to ensure that it kicks off. It's now 2025, it hasn't. Neither has he gone to massacre. So they released on bail, they're brutally arrested. They reapply for bail. Even the chance, the constitutional right to apply had been denied. I remember they had even refused to fix their case. Remember the ping pong? They had to come to Kampala, then go back to war crimes, then file in constitutional court, then go back to massacre. Their even right to apply had been denied. Then eventually when it was heard, they were first, which was pure on health grounds, they were rejected. And Segrinya was saying, I'm dying, I'm sick. You've all seen that picture of him on Zoom showing his injured foot with blisters all over. So, and remember that was the time when the president made very strong pronouncements against the release of suspects on bail, on capital offences. And I'm sure it played on the minds of the judicial officers who are refusing to entertain and so on, because he strongly made these comments that people should not be released on bail, and which song he has not relented on singing till today. And yet, like the Segrinya case shows, people remain suspects. If you have a case, why don't you try people? It's the duty of the state. It has all the resources. It has the capacity. You shouldn't use the denial of bail as a punishment that you keep in prison, which is the case now. In fact, there are many people who are rotting in prisons. All right. Yes, there was a, I wanted to bring in very briefly the other point of trial of civilians in court martials, of course, which brings us to this whole issue of this. We are not disputing the legality and the constitution of the courts. In fact, we are disputing the trial, the jurisdiction over civilians. In fact, Honorable Simon was talking about the Parliament made an act. There's a decision of the Constitutional Court, leave alone the other Kabaziguruka, which was stayed by the Supreme Court, which also is an indictment on the Supreme Court that you can stay a matter and with such constitutional ramifications on people, and you take 4 years, 3 years without rendering a decision. But there's another one in Amon Biarugaba where Constitutional Court said it was wrong for Parliament to give powers to the UPDF in the UPDF Act, which the Constitution did give them. Because if you look at the functions of the UPDF, administration of justice is not one of them. So it was unconstitutional, and that decision has not been stayed, neither has it been reversed, neither has it been appealed. So that's why people like Aaron Kiza, and I agree with them, say that the court is in contempt by father without removing. So all these issues. And if we look at the manner in which the court has been increasingly used to fight, to prosecute or persecute political perceived opponents, shine a light on whether we should be having civilians being tried in court martials today when courts have pronounced themselves.
Right. Let's bring in Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma. Mr. George Musisi talks about political persecution through the courts. I saw a statement earlier today issued by the Uganda Law Society in regard to the death of Honorable Segrinya, and they were suggesting that actually politics is being played in the courts, and it's leading to a number of challenges, including what they call eroding legal excellence, and leaves vulnerable individuals open to abuse. Do you think the courts are being used to actually carry out political persecution?
The law is political. Law is a political monster. But what we're witnessing in Uganda is the ugliness of it. It has exceeded acceptable limits. So the statement from the Uganda Law Society is accurate as it sounds. Because what we're witnessing is not just politicking in the courts of law, but the judiciary itself has become the space of politics. That all law has been forgotten, and instead we're playing absolute politics. You know, we used to live in a time where the state was guilty until proved innocent. The state was guilty, so the state took pains to explain itself. It on every single item, the state was suspected, and the state acted from the aura that the public suspects we are trying to scam them. So the state, at every single instance, issued long explanations about what we're going to do. This is why when the DPP was moving to court, he went with a big file to explain himself, because the state operated from a point of guilt until proved innocent. It wasn't people being prosecuted, it was the state. Now what has happened over the period is that now we are being harassed into the idea that the state, you the accused, you are guilty. You have to prove your innocence. So this is why we've been harassed into that this doesn't even have to explain itself anymore. It only acts, and it forces the wananchi to respond by saying, yeah, the state is always right. And I've had supposedly a little opinion, people saying, yeah, maybe this time they actually have evidence against Kizza Besigye. They've never had they've never had an evidence against him. The many times he's been, prosecuted. What makes you believe now they do? This is why, Anderson, I'm trying to shift this conversation a little bit. I'm thinking about the gamble of the deep state. There must be a CEO somewhere who sits and charts a plot line. How do we thicken the frustration of these people who are trying to prosecute? There must be somebody who sits somewhere and says, take them here, and then from here they should be moved here, and then by the time they go back here, the process become lengthier, and they are exhausted and tired, and perhaps even the media forgets about the entire thing. What is the gamble this time? What is the deep state gambling with making up a case that Kizza Besigye he went to Kenya to negotiate for a pistol, and he started an armed insurrection against the government of Yoweri Museveni? What is the gamble? I think there is more than meets the eye. There is more than meets the eye. The most plausible gamble, Anderson, I think the most plausible gamble is that they're trying to confuse folks in the opposition, right? So they're trying to manufacture a monster with public sympathy, so that Kizza Besigye, when he's released in mid-2025, is into public sympathy, and so people are torn between, the stalwarts and NUP, and perhaps Kizza Besigye with a new party being formed. You see, so that there's no movement that is attractive enough. So they're trying to create an alternative arm of the opposition in a way. It sounds plausible to a degree, right? The danger for me, Simon, Anderson, is that I'm going to go back to the point I made at the very beginning, that this gamble is dangerous for this country. This gamble is dangerous. Perry spoke about recovering our humanity. I really think that, and I'm starting to make appeals to people in the deep state. They're invisible. Maybe Samson Mlong here will help me. Simon, give me names. The CEOs, the people
You are the one who is talking about the deep state. And I was about to ask you who is at the helm.
We don't know. That's why they are deep. We don't know. This fellow here, so he has an idea. Who is the CEO? Who draws up these simulations, these mind games? Because you see, you can't pick from Masaka, then take them here without a plot line being drawn by either a group or a person. Who are they? Because we need to start appealing to them that this country is going to stay after them. Instead of reminding them about our collective humanity, we need to remind them that there's life after Museveni. And they have children, they are here, some of them are younger. I think Mr. Mlongo here, he could be in his 60s, Museveni is 80, so he's 20 years older than you. Going by the laws of natural justice, he's likely to die and you will stay. So I think maybe when the deep state are younger, they have bigger futures, they have children, they have bigger stakes in this country, that we need to start thinking the man that we have tied our lives onto, struggling to protect, making everybody's life so difficult, this man is going to kick the bucket at some point, whether we like it or not, going by the laws of natural justice. He has to die. And we need to start imagining a future where all of us have an equal stake in this country. This country, Anderson, can work for all of us. This country can work for all of us. There's always room at the dining table. There's always room. And the worry for me is the gamble with, trying to manufacture a monster out of Kizza Besigye, supposedly playing into this election year, 2025. And you see, even the arrest of Aaron Kizza, it was properly choreographed, right? First, lock the man from entering the venue, right? He's likely to lose his cool because he doesn't fear those people. He's not afraid of them. Many lawyers are afraid of facing head on with those men in uniform. Not Aaron Kizza. So they choreographed a plan to overwhelm us, with the enormity of the scandal. Kizza Besigye is in the dock. Add Aaron Kizza. I'm suspicious Martha Karua might end up in the same thing. Just overmatched with the scandal. Well, the first night, well, maybe she not, but you don't know. That's why I'm asking, who is the CEO drawing up these mind games and simulations? Because the gamble they're trying to play, assuming they're still playing with the 2025 election, maybe they think somebody has to have an easy win. The man they have tied their lives onto is way, way older than their lives. Simon, I'm appealing to you. You are in the States. You are here. I think in the spirit of fairness, I understand invited you because to represent the state. You are in the States.
He's the state.
Not really. He invited him for his opinion.
But he doesn't
and views.
dispute that. He's the state.
Although he speaks sometimes their language.
I'm appealing to the man in front of me.
You can appeal to the state actors. They're listening to you loud and
He
clear.
will have he has easier reach than via the microphone. This country can work for all of us, and there's always space at the dining table for all of us. And the man you're tagging your lives onto, assuming that's the gamble you're taking with Kizza Besigye, that man, according to the laws of natural justice, is well older. Of course, even young people die. I mean, what's his name? Muhammad Segirinya died when he was younger. All of us can die at younger ages.
All right.
But going by the laws of natural justice, at 80, we need to start imagining a life of this country after Yoweri Museveni.
All right, Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, the NRM is actually planning to front President Yoweri Museveni as its candidate in the next election. But in the article that you talked about, you seem to be giving him a certain piece of advice, and it's relevant to the 2026 general elections. When we return, we'll have a sneak peek in some of the issues that you put across to you to try to explain to us what exactly you think the role of President Yoweri Museveni should be, now that you're insisting that we should be thinking about a future without him. Now stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. When we return, I'll stamp out some of the comments that are already coming in from the WhatsApp line as we continue looking at the emerging issues this particular year in our country. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. We'll continue after this break. Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week, as we also look at the projections for this particular new year, which we are in. My guest this evening, Diombo Simon Mulongo, governance and security expert who served as deputy head of the African Union mission in Somalia. Dr. Yusuf Serunkuma, political economist, researcher, and columnist with the Observer newspaper. Ms. Peria Ritua, executive director, Women Democracy Network, and Mr. George Musisi, lawyer and pundit on governance issues. Now, we have a number of comments coming in from the listeners, and I would like to read out some of them. Now, good evening, Spectrum Xtra. Job Arua Boy. He says, fight hard should enter God's kingdom. Fight hard, meaning Muhammad Segirinya. He actually said that when he passes on, we should not say rest in peace, but we should say fight hard, Mr. Update. And people have picked up on that particular slang to use it in his memory. And he says, he should enter God's kingdom. I always shed tears seeing Segirinya dying when the state did not apply rule of law in handling his court issues. Now young ones are dying, leaving the old behind because of poor politics. Who will they lead for God and my country? Then we have another comment. George Lissengen from Bunga. He says, Kenneth, when you are keen enough, analyze how things befall each time. You find that in this regime, there are systematic tendencies of a section of people who think that it's them only and only who have the right to live in Uganda, and only them have a right of life, and impose all sorts of impunity to Ugandans. Everything has an end. That's a comment that comes in from George, who is listening in from Bunga. Dam Ashraf in Lubaga writes and says, thank you for your discussion yet again tonight. What is disheartening, however, is the clamor I hear of elections. To me, it's just a vicious cycle of violence which is coming back to wreck Ugandans. Yet again, no answers for last elections, and yet still more questions have already sprung up and still following. We have another comment. It's actually painful to listen to Honorable Mulongo. With due respect, I think he can be more humane by staying away from the topic. The man was denied bail even when he was visibly sick, and his case never even progressed. For Besigye, will this be the first time out of the many that state will be able to prove even one single case against this man? These people's lives and politics need to be better. Then we have another comment. The death of the young MP is sad, and I am so worried about the situation in this country. There is even another looming situation that is coming. Then we have a comment from another listener here who writes and said, the current government, as in many other developing countries, has only one goal: keep power as long as possible. It's quite clear that the spirit of many of the recent laws, such as the public order management and their nature of implementation, trump on freedoms and human rights. I hope when it leaves, we won't see details like ones we observed in Syria. He writes in and says MP Chira. I don't know who that particular person is. Well, we have heard from the listeners there giving us feedback. I don't know if he's the one actually. So, gentlemen, that's the kind of response that we're getting in from the listeners, pointing us to the issues that we are discussing. Now, one critical issue that has cut across is people talking about the nature of politics and how we need actually to sit down and accept that we have one country called Uganda, and at the end of the day, there's a big table, like Dr. Yusuf said, where everyone can sit and eat. People are pointing to the discussion that was going on between Trump and Obama during the funeral of Jimmy Carter yesterday, and they were saying, look, if those two people can talk after the tough exchanges they had, what is wrong in Uganda? Why are we accepting that we can have progressive politics where we respect each other and even value the lives of the political players? Honorable Mlongo.
I think I'll start with that. Simply because there was a coincidence of sitting that at a funeral, the two spoke. It is now making rounds of news. But before that, they never even reached out to each other. Even when Obama made it to the White House, Trump refused to even hand over or even be present to hand over, as it is, the culture is in America. So
that's the important thing.
I don't think that that's an example to emulate, because it's more of a coincidence. I would like to see something more culture, like the culture of the American history of presidents taking over and handing over power is supposed to be. I just want to, before I answer the question, and maybe I'll integrate it with the issues raised by Dr. Serunkuma here about the country's ours. We can fit in all of us.
There's a bigger table.
It's a bigger table. It's a huge cake. Which each one of us should be given a knife and begin cutting. Of course, it is. Uganda is a country with all the 242,000 square kilometers, and all of us are here. Dr. Serunkuma, myself, the honorable member of Kira, and all this, we're all in this country, and we're speaking from this country. He has his own bread he's cutting. He's earning a salary, he's educating his children, just like I'm doing as well.
I think you're making the issue trivial.
No, it's not trivial. I'm just saying, what cake are we talking about? Does he want to be a part of the presidency to be able to say he's cutting a cake?
Do you want him to respond to you right now?
No.
So I
didn't disrupt him. I don't disrupt him. The issue is that we have the cake, we have the knives, but we cut and share this cake in accordance with the laws of this country. There is one person who can be a president. There is one person who can be a member of parliament in a constituency, directly elected. There cannot be one person who is a chancellor of the university or a vice chancellor. That's the law. The law has designated the sizes of the knives and the positions of cutting the cake.
I think what Dr. Serunkuma is trying to say, that if you are the president, you should understand that you're leading people as a leader.
I'll come to that.
And that
you're answering for me, but
you should also treat your competitors.
Yes.
Now, within the law.
Yes, but the issue is, first and foremost, the legal regime in this country. That should be perhaps where we start from. The electioneering form of legal regime, where the winner takes it all, is perhaps where we should start from. If we think that is not fair enough, we took on the British or the American system, where the winner takes it all, and everybody, if you lose by one vote, then you go back into the cold. Maybe we could change it to some other proportional representation type, where actually then not everybody just loses out. That's one. The other one is the justice and fairness. To me, as long as the principles of justice are at play, the legal provisions are deployed and employed and practiced correctly, and all this, that's to me what is very important. Unfortunately, what do you call justice is dependent on how you interpret the given provisions. And you can talk of principles of natural justice and so on, and that's why where you have 3 lawyers, you have 4 opinions, because they will never agree on one thing. And as such, this being a big thing, and for us all, is also subject to interpretation. That's why when I was saying it, you're saying I was trivializing, because that's your opinion. And she will say something slightly different, and so on and so forth. So in my view, the government, by the way, I'm not a spokesperson of the NRM.
I said they're your friends. You're closer to them.
And
for me, I said
I'm a member of the
he
NRM.
speaks like them sometimes.
I'm a member of NRM, and I speak my view as a citizen of this country to the best of my conviction on a number of these issues.
Hampered by your membership.
So, the issue is...
Maybe let me put this to you. Are you happy with the nature of politics in our country? The way things are going?
I'm not even happy with American politics, not even with the British politics.
Let's stay at home here in Uganda.
Yes. You see, it is neither being happy nor being unhappy.
Okay, are you satisfied?
Because the issue is, if you're happy when you have won elections, you're unhappy when you have lost elections.
Are you satisfied?
So it depends on how you weigh it in.
As the framer of the Constitution, are you satisfied with where the country is
I am
heading
satisfied that
politically?
I made the Constitution. But how you people are playing around with the Constitution, it is your satisfaction with whoever is doing it. All of you, even you. Yes, you are. Whatever you're saying here, like the state has killed, you're actually bordering on the constitutional provisions, passing a judgment.
So as you wind up...
So to me, I'm not winding up because I'm responding to this. The issue is that...
you're winding up, Honorable Mlongo.
There are those who are happy and there are those who are not happy. That goes down to not just the state, but also to NGOs. It goes down to the family. There are those who are happy in your family and those who are not happy in your family. So it is not just black and white, that happy or not happy, because there are many gray points here. Some people are neither happy nor angry, but they're just there.
All right.
So why don't you create a third forum so that I may be in the third forum than saying I'm either black or white?
All right.
Because I could be gray.
Dr. Sorenkuma, you had a piece published in the Observer newspaper in which you were giving President Yoweri Museveni and the NRM party some advice. Like I already told you, he is expected to be the candidate of that political party in the 2026 general election. But you seem to think otherwise, in line with the question that I put to Honorable Simon Mulongo, defining the nature of politics in our country.
Thank you, Anderson.
What do you envisage as the role of President Yoweri Museveni at the moment?
You did not ask me that.
Thank you, Kenneth.
You will have an opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Kenneth.
Because you're adding in, you're spinning the question.
But it is mandate to do that.
I'm the one asking the questions,
Exactly.
Honorable Mlongo.
Yeah, but you should not be unfair to say the way you asked me and then you spin it to...
So you want
The
him to
only,
ask
fair,
the
the,
same
only
question?
the only fairness on this table is that I'll give you an opportunity to have a say.
That's another constitutional
What's wrong
matter.
with these people?
Please proceed, Dr. Serunkuma.
First, I should thank you for giving me a chance to say a bit more about that piece. A couple of things are ongoing in that piece. And I've been writing about the things, I think for the last maybe 4 weeks. Appealing, making several appeals. But this time I said I need to sort of speak to the president directly, right? Because I think I've appealed to the deep state plenty of times. And I think I'm appealing to deaf ears. But, unlike my friend here, George, who is excited and enthusiastic about the next election, I am not. I am not enthusiastic about the next election.
You've said that before.
It's a pathetic.
And I want to say this country needs to appeal to the president. But I'm appealing not to our humanity. I'm appealing to the interests of Yoweri himself and those around him. They have interests. How are they thinking about their interests? They have access to national cake in a very gigantic way. How are they protecting those interests? They have their children who are way, way younger than they are in positions. How are they protecting them? I said that death in office for Yoweri Museveni is a recipe for disaster. from the way things are going, looks like Yoweri Museveni is ready to die in office. He's not happy.
Some people actually say it could be a
Let
uniting
me finish.
factor.
He's
Dr.
not,
Serungoma.
he's not happy
Mm.
with 38 years of the sacrifice given to Uganda. In that article, I take a non-confrontational posture. I take, I'm not a member of the opposition. You know, even when sometimes I cut a posture of member of the opposition,
You're an elder.
I'm taking a non-confrontational
Opposition posture.
nationalistic posture to say we have futures to build.
Mm.
You see, we shouldn't look at 2025. We have futures to build together. And how do we build these futures together? I'm appealing to Museveni's sense of mortality. That you are human. Even industrial products reach a time and they collapse. You're not immortal. I'm appealing to I'm reminding him that you are a mortal being. You're going to die. And from religious aspects, from scientific aspects, life expectancy, literature, it is true that when you go past 70, you're living on borrowed time.
Dr. Serungoma,
How do you prepare?
we may not have a lot of time to
Okay,
go
but
bad by word.
I wanna finish the
What's your main fear? Because
My main fear is
Mr.
death.
Museveni that you're talking about will tell you there's a constitutional framework that actually handles all these issues that you're talking
I
about.
started by saying earlier that
If he dies in office,
when
the vice president takes over.
when
There's
a
an
calf-
election after 6 months.
when a calf in the cross starts behaving like a bull, you know the bull, the bull is not well. There's a Museveni's son has told us many times, and he's the commander of the armed forces. He said he's going to be the president after his father. You see, and he's the commander of the armed forces. And as this country, we have a history of the military interfering with the president.
And you take him seriously.
Because the commander of the armed forces and this country has a history of men in uniform usurping constitutional mandates. I've looked at Museveni's appointments, the cabinet of fishermen, the structures that would sustain us together, such as the judiciary, is kaput. Parliament, kaput. The office of the vice presidency, kaput. I should tell you, you know, some July I've telling them the story. There was a cabinet meeting which sat not too long ago, and there was the prime minister, the speaker of parliament, Museveni himself, his wife, and the vice president.
And Semuju.
And no, he was
You're
told.
not talking about the media.
Wait. Let me finish the story. isn't
Kaput.
it? So, Museveni somehow gets tired of chairing this meeting. Now, this is a cabinet meeting. Once Museveni gets tired, the meeting should be chaired by the next in command, who is the vice president. If not, then next in command, who is the prime minister. Next, the speaker. You know what Museveni said? He said, Mama should continue chairing the meeting.
Well, the president has the power to delegate,
Yeah,
not
but,
so.
But in that meeting, there's the constitutional people who are supposed to.
Mama has delegated speaker. to
Mama
present her
is a
before.
minister.
What if the issue
Listen, Mama-
concerned the education sector where Mama is the minister?
That means you chair.
In other words,
So anyway,
I'm trying to
the point-
suggest,
the point
none
is
of
this.
us was in that
The
cabinet
point is
meeting.
this: when you say that
Mm.
there are constitutional provisions on how power is transferred from one person to the other, this country has a history. There are people who are posturing that they want to be the next presidents, and they have power to do so. They are situated in strategic positions. That
So
if
you
they wanted.
land your
to happen.
article. What do you envisage the president to do right now?
I'm borrowing from Daniel Arap Moi. I'm looking at the Kenyan example. When Moi was president, Moi looked further ahead, and he said, people close to him sat him down and said, the way this country is looking, the way things are looking, at some point you have to stop. And in October of 2002, he announced to the country that he was not standing. He said, I'm not standing. Let other people take over from me. I have done enough. He had done 24 years. And he felt 24 years were quite a lot. Ours has done 38. And from the look of things, he's preparing for the next election, where he will do 42. Maybe even the next one, maybe even the next one. But you see, at that moment when he has killed all the other structures that would give us cohesion as a country, from the judiciary to parliament, to the vice president's office, to Makerere University, you see, we have to appeal to this man.
All right. George Musisi,
Yes.
you agree with Dr. Serunkuma?
That is just
Or you are ready to
and
beat,
excited.
or you are ready to beat the NRM at the next
those
polls?
are Dr. Yusuf's words.
Your
of
leaders
excitement.
your leaders already told us that he will be running again.
Yes, but he didn't use the
Although
word
some people
Serunkuma.
actually, some people actually think that these elections are useless.
Okay, let me. I don't want to use the words excitement and enthusiasm, and I don't know where Yusuf has picked them. Yeah. Yes,
That's enthusiasm.
no, that's not your understanding. It's not my understanding of enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is looking forward with glee. Anyhow, and I've had this argument, and I've had this argument, Anderson, you're raising that, if you people keep on you don't believe in elections, free and fair elections, why do you keep on standing?
I'm not the one raising it.
Yeah, and I said I've had it
You've
before.
heard it from different stakeholders.
And you've said it here before. Are you denying it? You've said it now.
I even had-
Why don't you own it? You've just asked it as a question.
You can accuse me of that.
Yes.
You seem to be agitated. I don't know why.
I'm not agitated. I don't know why you don't want to own up your words. Let me address that statement as well. To all the people who want a contrary position, or who think that the opposition shouldn't be participating, because if it's even should be that, why should you participate in elections which you know it's pre-planned? I'm one of those who think that this government has no will to organize free and fair elections, like it has been in a number of elections that we've seen. However, on the other hand, we've had all these arguments that we need reforms of electoral laws, we need reconciliation, we need dialogue. At some point, the Minister of Justice 3 years ago said that this is my task. The first thing is to ensure that I bring an amendment to the Constitution and a number of electoral laws. And 3 years down the road, I'm sure he has faced the reality that the people he made the MOU with are not interested in that kind of talk. That is why no bill has come out of government, and we are going to suffer the same fate like we've suffered the same. So, on the other hand, I look at democratic struggles as having multi-pronged approaches. Because the other question I would ask those who would rather the opposition not participate, that then what? So if what should you propose? That because that's what the Constitution envisages. The Constitution says that this government, which is in power, will run out of office in May 2026. So if you're saying that, no, don't look forward. So by not participating, does it make the laws better? Does it create the environment? Does it create the reconciliation?
The issue is, if you participate and then you're defeated, do not cry out.
Let me, Anderson, listen to my point. I go to court. I handled a number of public interest cases, and many of them delay in court, despite the law saying that, for instance, human rights enforcement action cases should be heard in 1 year and be concluded. I have some which have not been heard for 3 years. And I faced that question many times, that why do you go to court where the justice system is so clogged, where there's backlog, where you're not likely to get a decision in 4 years? And I ask them, if I don't, what should I do? Should I go to a shrine and pray? Should I fast over this, that the person gets a relief? Because that's the legal remedy that the law envisages. So I would conversely ask a question, that you're saying that then you should not cry when you have these elections. That if they were not to participate, and they say we're not participating because the ground is not leveled, because there are no reforms in electoral laws, does that in itself bring the reforms?
Let me ask you,
yes,
as you go into this election, are you going in to win or to simply participate? And do you think the conditions that exist allow you to be an effective player in that process?
Anderson, the context is that every election, every democratic struggle, you use every opportunities available to and some of these democratic struggles, you just have to look at all of them all over the world. They have taken sometimes slow, painful progresses. I think what many of the current actors in the opposition are built up on what the struggle of what Dr. Kizza Besigye led for over 20 years, and what Dr. Semogere led. If a democratic struggle is not like a switch which we switch on and off to say that, okay, by 2026 we shall have elections. So for me, I don't think that if you're looking at it in the bigger context, it's not a yes or no, that are you going to win or not. You look at it in terms of progress and the struggle for, because what we are now, we have a pseudo-democracy. We have a military government. You're not going to say that
So why legitimize that particular government by participating in what you've been calling the sham election process?
I've told you, Anderson, that that's what the law provides. And I've asked that what do you propose? You ask the proponents that what do they propose? They're like, okay, if they don't participate, what happens?
There's what they call a boycott.
And then what happens? All of a sudden, did you see what happened in 2005 referendum when the leading parties boycotted? Mr. Museveni brought Nelson Ochegere on the other side, and then there was a referendum. You think we're out? We're in the opposition where we even have a president of an opposition party sitting in cabinet. You think we will have a shortage of candidates? So for me, the question is, I don't want to look at it in the narrow sense of saying that if you participate, then because that is the same.
So how would you?
And I want to marry it with the same reasons of people ask. We had a debate of trial of civilians court martials. People ask that, but why do you go there? You legitimize, and I always tell them that you have a person in custody. As lawyers, it's not about you. It's not about your idealism. It's about the other person. So I can be idealistic and say I don't recognize idea and I don't go there. Even democracies that Honorable Simon loves, like US, you know that at some point they do backdoor negotiations with you see what when they are posturing with Russia, and then before you know it, there have been negotiations. So my point is, every democratic struggle has contours, and those contours sometimes are painful. And I want to imagine that Dr. Kizza Besigye, who has run in very, very shaky and unleveled and unfree and unfair elections over 4 years, his struggle has achieved many things, despite not winning. So you don't look at a democratic process as a winner and then all of a sudden it would be presumptuous to mean that if opposition is declared, then all the things are now okay. Because that's what our constitution provides, that the mandate of this government runs out.
So your formula is to chop around the tree until the point when it's...
That's how every struggle moves.
All right,
that's how every struggle moves.
Perry.
Apartheid struggles took longer than even the struggle for this, what we have struggled with.
Perry.
You see, I think for every country, you have to see what you stand to gain from doing certain things differently. If you see the level of interest in countries like Ghana, and if you read their history of how they got to this level, it was not a bed of roses. But right now, they are reaping the benefits of trying to do the right thing.
Even Kenya,
exactly. I'll use Ghana because it seems to be working. And it's not as good as they would want it to be, but they have tried because they have seen their benefits. It brings more stability. It creates certainty that after a certain period you'll have a new person, they will have new ideas, and it's not perfect. And that's why it's critical for every leader to have a picture bigger than themselves, to say that what will I leave behind once I'm gone.
Legacy.
Exactly. What is good for the country that I lead? For me, that's, I think, the vision that other countries that have attempted to progress in terms of how they choose their leaders have done. And that's why I will continue to use Ghana. Because if you look at their level of tourism, and that's why I say let's focus on the benefits of doing the right thing, especially when it comes to your governance system. There's more interest. There's more investment, because there is a certain level of trust that people who come to Ghana have, that there will be stability, that there will be more accountability, that the system sort of works. And it's not perfect. And I want to agree with George that for every country attempting to work on that kind of governance that they want in terms of how they choose their leaders, it's not easy. And that's why just 4 years back we saw the US struggling. But I think what we learned from them is that there must be leaders who rise above their party interests to do the right thing. I think that's what the youth showed the rest of the world, that it will not be easy, and there must be individuals who will say, no, I will do the right thing. And I think that's what the Vice President then, Pence, did, you know, to say, I will ensure that the Electoral College results are read. And you see, that's why individuals are very critical for any system to work, that you must have a few people who will rise above.
A few good men.
And women. Who will rise above the system, especially when they see things are not going right. Now, I wanted to respond to something that Honorable Mlongo said. He
Very
said,
quickly.
you see, there's only one leader at a time. No one disputes that. The thing is, when you're given that opportunity to lead, how do you lead? Do you ensure that everyone is gaining from your leadership in terms of how justice is administered, how resources are allocated, that the aspirations of this country, as mentioned in our constitution, are things that we can all see that you're working towards, together with us. And I think for me, that's the question for Ugandan leaders. When we look at our constitution and the aspirations and the values, do we question ourselves to say, is this what Ugandans are seeing in terms of our leadership? Because I strongly believe it starts and ends with leadership.
All right. Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. We go for a break. When we return, more comments, more responses from the panelists. I can see Dr. Serum Kuma is raring to go. I'll give you an opportunity to respond to any of the things that have come here on the table, including you, Honorable Simon Mulongo. But at the moment, we take a break. When we return, we'll continue looking at some of the issues that have emerged from this round of discussion, but we also have the other leg of looking at the economy, because it matters a lot to Ugandans. So stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. We'll continue after this break. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, review of the major events of the week, as we also project what is likely to happen in 2025, which is an election year leading to the 2026 general elections. My guest, Honorable Simon Mulongo, governance and security expert, served as deputy head of the African Union Mission in Somalia. He also served as Bubulo East MP and a member of the constitution-making body, the Constitutional Assembly. Dr. Yusuf Serum Kuma, political economist, researcher, and columnist with the Observer newspaper. Ms. Peria Ritua, Executive Director, Women Democracy Network, Uganda chapter, pundit on governance and human rights matters. She's also a seasoned election observer. Mr. George Musisi, lawyer and pundit on governance and human rights. He's a member of the National Unity Platform Party. My name is Kenneth Lukwago Anderson, your host. We have a number of comments coming in from the listeners, so I'll read out some of those. Good evening, Radio 1. This is Patrick from Soroti. I'm disappointed with the likes of Honorable Mlongo, who is saying trying civilians in court-martial is okay. This is impunity of the highest level. The Mlongos should not use state institutions for playing their politics. Our country is bleeding. Honorable Mlongo rightly cites countries similar to Uganda. Israel was concocted as a country in state of emergency. Egypt, Pakistan, Myanmar, and a few others similar to Uganda. Since the mid-60s, the military in Uganda has constituted a social class on its own. It's a big deal to Uganda, a strong factor in our politics, not only because of our history, but also the nature of Uganda's citizenry. Ugandans actually worship the military, and that's why the mystification of the gun failed. In Kenya, soldiers are civil servants. In Tanzania, they serve on contract from the rank of major. Here, they are such a big deal. Amo Martin in Bari, Honorable Simon Mlongo, could I be correct to conclude that all intelligence personnel are intelligent? Yiga Samuel Mary, listening in from Namlondo Zone in Buyagere. Kenneth, thank you for the show. I salute the panelists, especially Council Sisi, for his clear view of the matters in the country. The major problem we are facing in Uganda today is in some 7 and his comrades manipulating every institution. That man called Serum Kuma, who is obsessed with the death of Mr. Museveni, is he aware that he can die before Mr. Museveni? Is he the one who determines death?
100%.
Dear Kenneth, Uganda is at a crossroads. Even Simon Mulongo knows this. Irrespective of where one belongs to Uganda, one belongs, the Uganda of 5 to 20 years to come is not certain. The constitutional framework has not been tested. There is urgent need of all stakeholders in this country to talk about hard issues. That's a comment from Edison. Lastly but not least, Lumbuye Lawrence, listening in from Zigoti. Spectrum Extra, true, there is one leader at a time, but the leader should not be the system. And we also have a comment coming in from Nairobi from Mr. Abuso, who is listening in. Thank you very much for your comments. Much appreciated for you tuning in to this particular show. Honorable Mlongo.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the point about fairness is also subjective, because if you ask President Museveni to explain how fair he is, he will tell you it's fair. He is running the country according to the constitution, and that people, depending on their beliefs, associations, whether you are a non-government organizations or you are a CBO like herself, or you are an academia like Dr. Serum Kuma, an anthropologist whose roots in anthropology seems to be more current than anthropologistic. So all the things are there. I think fairness is so subjective. I know there are those who believe they have been treated unfairly. And of course, the likes of the Dr. Kizabesije and others, including my brothers here in red, you will think has been treated unfairly. But what is the fairness in this world? It is rough. The world is rough. People struggle. Even the Bible talks of the world of the kingdom of God is being grabbed by those who are struggling. So the world is about struggle. Even the president is struggling. He will even tell you he has been treated so unfairly by very many people who attack him, who abuse him, who do everything. So I think the question of unfairness depends on the merits of the argument. And we can take it case by case. And I also have been treated unfairly a number of times. I've contested elections where I felt I was treated unfairly. But the issue is, do we have institutions? Do we have avenues for redress? That's the most fundamental thing. And are there principles of justice being observed? And all these things, and that's why I agree with my colleague in red, that you can't tell him to abstain. You can't tell him to boycott, because by participation, he contributes. He can even cause change, however minimum it is, by participation. So I think even in this kind of treatment we're talking about is the extent to which we can also seek redress, seek justice, and the struggle continues. The issue of post-Museveni, definitely is going to be a post-Museveni period. Whether we like it or not, he will come, and he even himself knows that. But we should also observe
It's about knowing, but does he care? That's the
of
question.
course he cares. I mean, he has created institutions. We have institutions of administration. Institutions. We have parliament. We have judiciary. We have.
And you heard Dr. Serukuma saying kaput.
But that's kaput. He's speaking German in an English setting, which doesn't know, I don't know what it means. When talk of kaput, that is dead. They're not dead. These are living institutions, including the institutions of higher learning. We're generating graduates, and he's part of the mentors of graduates of this country. They're not dead. Otherwise, his graduates will be as dead as he is. But unless he's saying he's not dead, it's only others who are dead. But I think that if there are situations of challenges, we must go after them and confront those challenges. Then, in terms of post-Museveni, we have, for example, our party structures. We have them. He has the SEC. He doesn't take decisions alone. He has to consult SEC. We have the NEC. We have the delegates conference that meets occasionally whenever there's need to beat, and so on. We have candidates that come through the structures, and very soon we shall have elections of structures, and people offer themselves up to the national chairperson, and people contest and win. So really, to say there are no institutions in this country is abuse of common sense, and others wouldn't be here. Even the media institutions are in place, and so on and so forth. And after President Museveni, we'll be having those structures, whether it is the NUP structure, whether it is the DP structure, or the NRM structure, or a combination of them, will generate leaders. So I don't think we should be so much overwhelmed about President Museveni and creating a lot of worries. No. I think the issue of fairness, before I hand over the mic, we had institutions as we are here, either our firms, of legal firms, or consultancy firms, and so on. I can assure you, if I took a torch into our institutions where we had, I'll find people complaining against any one of us. That doesn't mean that you are wrong. That simply calls for the fact that there could be something that is not right, and you should address it. So the question of management and control occurs every day and every time. So even national governance, there are those who are happy, there are those who are unhappy. And if they express their unhappiness, there must be avenues for us to do so, including coming here and speaking out our minds, so that we can say, Dr. Serunkuma, I'm not happy. I'm speaking directly to President Museveni, and he hears. I can tell you that the president listened to clips from these media houses. He hears. And he replies to you either directly or indirectly. And I can tell you, he does not.
All right.
Has he threatened you? No,
All right.
he has never threatened you.
Dr. Serokuma,
So-
take it away.
You know,
Closer to the mic.
And I tell listeners, he's pointing a finger at me. Yes.
you know, unlike Simon, who was a visitor to Somalia, I
Mm.
wrote my PhD in Somalia. I traveled to Somalia, spent a year in Somalia. I studied Somali history and Somali politics. Muhammad Siad Barre, in the build-up to the 1991 ethnic cleansing, he had killed every single institution of that country. But he had men like Simon Mlongo, who argued that if there's some were happy, some weren't happy. There are men like that. So when the house came down, there was absolute ethnic cleansing in that entire country. And to this day, it hasn't recovered. I have keenly observed Sudan. We have many Sudanese refugees in this country right now because a man overstayed his welcome. And he only waited to be pushed out. And so that country is now, vultures have come and they are breaking that country apart. And many of those people are dying and looking for peace elsewhere. But in the time of Bashir, he had men like Simon Mlongo who said, if you're not happy, you leave the country.
I can't say people leave the country.
But if you look at those countries,
I didn't say
they
that.
had men like you, Simon, and they had leaders like ours.
Those who had men like you,
So I am
who are wishing people hell.
I am a reader of history. And I, like you who visited Somalia, I studied Somalia. And I'm telling you, even religious institutions, you know, Siad Barre would even kill sheikhs. Ours hasn't killed them, but he has cheapened them. He has killed some, but he has cheapened them. They're so cheap now.
And I'm a student of
that,
military
that if they show
history,
up, they show up at a public
strategy,
function,
and conflict.
they don't hold the aura of men of religion as they used to be. So we are looking at that's what is hovering over our heads. So when I speak about the danger we face, I'm not making up stuff. I'm
All
a
right.
reader of history. There are a couple of points that were made.
Very
You know,
quickly.
and I want to respond to them. You know, this is what the country is going to miss Mohamed Segirinya. I've for a long time appealed to Bobi Wine that if he really understood why they participated in this election, Francis Zake would have been the leader of opposition in that parliament. Because the question we ask, why participate? You see, George was asking, boycott then what? Then the question is, participate then what? Mohamed Segirinya and Francis Zake are the only two MPs understood what it means to participate in an electoral process under an autocracy which has ingrained itself to this degree. They understood the assignments. Aaron Kaiser understands what it means to participate in a judicial process which is flawed at the very beginning. So the question is why participate? Aaron Kaiser will go there and push and push and push. Push on the terms as set by the one you're fighting. You see, akugoba ya kubo, as we say in Uganda, I'm sure that's also in Lukonjo.
In Rugisu.
Even in Lumasawa, it must be, there must be saying akugoba ya kubo.
That's Luganda, it's not Lumasawa.
But there must be a similar proverb which speaks to this truth, that power determines the way it is opposed. If you go to the military court
That's
martial
not what it means.
and those people are acting violently, the colonized understand the language of the person on the other side and you respond in their language. So Aaron Kaiser fully understood the language of the court martial and he was speaking their language. Even now in jail, he's still speaking their language. So the position I presented earlier is not an anti-participation position. I am not a boycotter. No, I'm not into the boycott movement. I'm not. So
You're just saying the same thing differently.
I'm not in the dialogue movement. I'm not, because dialogue, we don't have the grounds upon which we can sit at the table. We can only dialogue when both of us know.
You're a coward.
We lose something if we don't talk.
You're a coward.
No, the ground is not there for conversation. I'm not a reconciliatory person. I'm not into the reconciliation movement. Neither am I into electoral reforms. Because only Museveni can reform elections on his terms. I am proposing a third movement, or maybe a fifth movement, as we participate and define the reasons for participation. We need to speak to Museveni.
All right.
My movement is clear and simple. We need to talk to
To
Museveni.
tell him what?
We need to send men like Simon Mulongo. He said, when you sit in the deep of the night, you talk to your man and say, what you felt to do in your 40s and 50s, what more do you want to do? With your wobbly body, you're haggard,
Wobbly?
you haven't seen him walking.
The look on Simon's face.
You haven't seen him walking.
He's very fit. How can you say he was wobbly?
You haven't seen him walking.
Yes,
You look at
I've
Museveni
seen-
walking.
I've seen him
You look
walking.
at Museveni walking.
He doesn't
in,
wobble.
1995.
Honorable Surgery,
And see him
Honorable
walking now. But the
You're
point I'm
going
making is
personal.
that-
You're going personal in
is
this
that-
case. Do you know how you walk?
Dr. Serunkuma.
Listen, no
That's what they
boycott.
call body shaming.
No,
You're going
I'm not-
personal. It's
I'm-
not correct. It's
And
not
you're,
fair.
you're also
Protect
talking
me.
about the fountain of
Protect
honor.
me from heckling.
And the fountain of honor, indeed.
You see, that's the problem with this country, is that we think Big Fountain of Honor, he has a bigger stake than all of us. This is our country too, with an
Yes.
equal stake.
We don't have the same stake, even here.
Look, with an equal stake, he was born in this land and he contributes to this land as a public servant. You see, that position is a position of a public servant. The problem is
Right.
that for him,
Mm.
that's why even it cheapens us calling us Muzukulu, that he thinks he owns the place. This man is a public servant. Simon, please remind this man that he's a public servant. So, George, I wanted to
He's
respond.
very
I want
mindful.
to put the
Always.
As you wind up,
that as we speak about non-boycott, we need to ask questions. Why do we participate? Do we participate to become another docile, noisy, exciting opposition, but with no results to show? Or we want to be an opposition which uses the space of opposition to do something much more than just occupying these offices? A boycott works in a particular context. Boycott is industrial action. Boycott only works in relationship. You see, when the opposition in parliament...
Your
is-
concept.
Wait, you're interfering. When the opposition in parliament decides to boycott, they are already in a relationship with the people in government. Museveni cannot quickly manufacture opposition MPs when there's an issue to be boycotted. This is why, when there was Teju Kwatako, Museveni understood that I need to bribe the opposition to oppose. So he bribed his people to pass the amendment, also bribed people in the opposition to stay in that house to oppose, so that he can have a semblance
What
of victory.
What a theory.
all right. Well, let's hear from
Cantankerous theory.
time is not on our side. We need to move on, and let me bring in George Musisi. Your quick thoughts as we come to the end of this particular discussion on the issue of the politics of 2025.
Of course, quickly, I was moving very well with Dr. Yusuf
Until
until he talked about we need to talk to Museveni, and then for me, my
is that not an option for you, NUP?
the problem, this is the problem, that I say that, and Dr. Serunkuma is a researcher. He's talked about, has researched about Siad Bali, he has researched about Sudan. I don't know, and I don't know why he hasn't researched about this man called Yoweri Museveni and whether he has a will. I want to give 3 examples that has happened. When Dr. Kizza Besigye came out in 2001, apparently the Ankole parliamentary group sat him down in the public service boardroom, which was then the Minister of Honorable Banyamchega. And they told him, but this man is standing for the last term. Why don't you let him, you come in 2006. He told them, if this man doesn't come, then I'm not Chief FA's son. When I also read an autobiography of the Chief Justice Emeritus, Bat Katurebe, when he said that he was in London and Mr. Elia Kategaya, God rest him in peace, came to him and said, can you imagine Museveni wants to change the constitution? And this was described as a childhood friend. He couldn't believe that his childhood friend is going to change the constitution in 2005-6. So, we were here when we were discussing Honorable Norbert Mao, and you all remember the idealism and zeal he had and all the English word he used when he was defending his corporate. So, history and the different examples are supposed to teach us to predict the future. And I don't think that he has any interest, for starters, from what he's doing. Yusuf himself profiled how the number 2 in his head is his wife. And so for him, I don't think that. What is his view of the opposition? Does he view them as participants, or as people, stakeholders in this electoral process, or as detractors and saboteurs? That is his view. He looks at opposition as enemies to be crushed. So I don't think that that in itself will yield, especially if there is not that, because if you look at, apart from Kenya, where Moi had a pushback, but if you look at Uganda today, who is going to make the force of ensuring that the two parties sit? Because what I agree that yes, our country is too polarized, that there is need to talk to each other. What is going to make the talking? Who is going to lead the talking?
I'm not dialogue. I didn't say I'm a dialogue person.
What kind of
Talking.
I just want to go and kneel before the president and talk to him.
The time is not on our side to open up a bigger debate on this issue.
One last
I'm not
very
comment.
quickly.
One last comment on this. I think I need to end with the plight of our brother Aaron Kiza, who has sat on this desk several times. That we need to use his custody. And sometimes when I was talking to him in custody, he told me prisoners welcomed him in the sense that you are going to raise our plight now. They welcomed, say that thank God you are here. And he was telling me that they are even hoping, they think that I might go before the 9 months, so everyone wants to utilize me, yet I'm still very weak because of beaten. We should use his incarceration to shine a light onto some of those issues, especially the 12 civilians in court martial. Of course, when I talk about Aaron, I should declare my bias. Aaron is a friend, close friend. I've represented him, he has represented me. But a lawyer, and people will think that, but we look at the fact that he was in the course of his business. Yeah. Now, he was not even an accused person. He didn't enter court as an accused person. He entered court as a lawyer, who was, and then eventually whatever happened. But let's look at the plight of Aaron, of Dr. Kizza Besigye and Obed Lutale, to raise the flag, to raise the torch on the continued use of the army court to set off political scores.
Well, there was a cheat which I think was actually smuggled out of the prison. I don't know if you people were allowed actually to bring it out. And the person who put it on social media actually suggests it was written by Aaron Kiza. And he says, "Greetings to you." He says, "I'm feeling strong in spirit. Freedom is everything. I am a prisoner of conscience. I'm here because of standing up for freedom for civilians wrongly tried in military tribunals, contrary to the law. I will live here and join you soon." And he signs "Stronger."
I can confirm that.
You are the one who carried this cheat, not so?
I can't confirm. I'm not the one, but I can confirm
You can't
that.
confirm, neither deny. But maybe just to also highlight that the beating and the torture of human beings, it's just wrong. And you see, there are things where there is no justification. You know, if someone is detained, why then go ahead to torture, to abuse? For me, it takes away from the fact that we are the only humans. I mean, we're the only mammals created with a brain to rationalize things. And I think it's wrong, and it should stop. Not only because many of us know Aaron, but for every person in detention. We need to treat people with humanity, because at the end of the day, anyone can be in that situation. And you know, that's the funny thing. I always remember the case of Ibinjira. You know, you make rules and then it is used against you. And that's why it's critical that everyone in position of power tries to do the right thing. That when people have given you the opportunity to serve, you know, use the laws, use them fairly. And you see, when we talk of fairness, it is the facts, it's the evidence. At least that's what every court relies on. It's not just saying, for me, I look at it differently. No. For every lawyer, they will teach you. For every judge, they know that use facts, use evidence, so that you dispense justice on behalf of people. But as we come to the conclusion, we are going into an election. There are things that actually don't require legal reform. We just need to address the issue of behavior. Behavior of citizens, behavior of parties, behavior of security forces, that every time you have a situation, you want to be violent, you know, as if we are going to war. And yet you hear other countries have had elections and things go on, it's civil. The other thing is administrative reforms. You know, there are things that don't require the law. For instance, if you want people with disabilities to participate in an election, why would you put a nomination center in a place where it's inaccessible? Why would you do voter education that does not speak to the issues that marginalize and that discriminate a group of people? So for me, it is, you're given a position of authority. Don't always look at the law. Use your power at times to just do the right thing. And for me, that's my conclusion on this issue.
Your concluding remarks, Honorable
Yes,
Simon. Longer to come
I
to
think
the end of the
very
show.
important, the point I left out and which I want to emphasize is that the age should not be used to whip sentiments for or against the president, Museveni, because there are many other presidents, like Mahmoud Abbas of Palestinian National Authority is 89, Salman Abdulaziz is
So it's a
89,
competition of age.
Joe Biden is 82
And
coming
he's
out.
leaving. That's why he didn't stand
and then,
again.
Let's allow him. Let's allow him to conclude.
Michael Higgins, President of Ireland, is 83, and Sergio Mattarella, President of Italy, is 83, and so on.
With no
You know,
power.
you
The
can
Prime
be,
Minister runs
you can
the
be,
state
You have
in
not
Italy.
talked
You
about,
can be actually
you have not
30
talked about the one
you
of
can,
Cameroon.
you can, yes, you can be 30 years, but you're much weaker than somebody who is 85. So I think it is not about age. It is about good stewardship, and which I think the president has
Can I quickly
convinced
respond to that?
majority of leaders in this country, I mean electorates in this country, to do the same. If you fail to defeat him at the ballot, don't just hate him.
Museveni himself said, you know, at 75.
No, this is the last
In a
shot.
Yoweri Museveni said himself that at 80,
Above
75,
75. Mm.
you lose your oomph.
Yeah.
You even start losing your teeth.
True, but
you lose your teeth.
he may not have been
Your skin
scientific.
gets wrinkled. You lose your shine. You get gray
Biden
hair.
said he was too old.
Biden
Not
is
have
senile.
managed.
Yes, but he has not been declared senile. President Museveni is not senile.
Paul
In
Biya,
fact, he is brilliance.
Paul Biya breaks window
Across the region, when he meets other colleagues, you see his brilliance is just
Paul Biya breaks window in public.
unmatched.
You're waiting for President to do that?
But he has not done that.
Yes, but we
Hasn't
can't wait
done
for
that.
It. We can't wait for it. You
He
see,
hasn't done
I'll
that.
go back to the example I gave Anderson.
Very quickly.
That the men who have ruined their countries, the countries where right now people are selling slaves in those countries since 1990s have failed to recover. The men had I was going to say, I was
The men.
They also have men like you. They have men like you who speak against them.
There were men who tried to put sense
That
in
is
them.
even right from the beginning, the first year of his leadership
Simon,
here in Uganda.
Simon, let me
There were
finish
people
the
for
point.
and the people against.
Simon,
So there's no
Simon,
difference.
Simon, I'm telling you, you're way younger than you are in Museveni.
Yes, Dr.
And
Cyril.
age is a factor of life. This is why in our constitution we had even put an age limit.
All right.
That
I'm
we had
afraid
an
time
entire
is not our
parliament
best ally. We have to bring this
remove this
conclusion.
thing from the
We have to bring this to a conclusion.
Age has
Let me
never
thank you,
been
dear panelists, for actually joining this table this
a
evening.
fact of
And thank you
intelligence.
very much, dear listeners, for
thank you.
tuning in, but also contributing to this discussion. Now, from me and the team here in studio, we wish you a good weekend.